1, 2, 3.
Here we are on the Metal Voice with a special guest today, Claude Schnell from the Dio band.
And it's pronounced Claude, not Claude.
Yes, we are very familiar with the way it's pronounced here in Quebec. It's Claude.
Claude, ça va bien?
Oui, ça va très très bien. Et vous avez tout à fait raison, à Québec c'est Claude, mais ici à Los Angeles c'est Claude, et à Brooklyn, où j'ai habité, c'est Claude.
Claude.
There you
So,
go.
translation.
Avec Vinny Appice, il m'appelle Claude. What are you doing? Claude, come on, we're late. Claude. Alors il y a 3 prononciations.
There.
So, just a quick translation. In New York, it's Claude. Claude, how do you say
Yeah,
that?
that's it. Claude.
In France, c'est Claude.
And in the US, it's
in
Claude.
the US, it's Claude.
There you go.
There you go. All
And
right.
that finishes our interview. Terrific.
That's it. Thank you for tuning in for Linguistics 101.
That's right.
So what have you been up
Yeah,
to?
however you call it, just call me when there's recording to be done.
Okay,
There you
there you
go.
go.
There.
So let's just start off.
Voilà.
Tell everybody quickly, like in 20, 30 seconds, you were born in France and you came to the United States. Just quickly tell us about that.
Yeah, actually that's not accurate. I was born in Brooklyn, and then I quickly went to France because my grandmother, wanted her first grandson to be raised with family, and there was no family to speak of in New York. My dad had a few scattered cousins, but in France there was my uncle, there was my aunt, there was the family house basically. So soon after I was born, on a déménagé, we moved back to France, and I lived in Paris with actually a suburb of Paris called Drancy, with my in the family home until I was 5 or 6. The important detail was that I was back in New York by age 6 to start school in America.
There you go.
That was in the post World War II generation. That was a big plus to be able to raise a child in America, because as you probably know from your history, the valor with which the Allies emancipated France, that was something that has lived on for decades.
Yep.
So how'd you make it to?
So, in a nutshell, that was it.
There you go.
There we go.
If anybody's really bored enough that they want more details, if you go to my website, claudeschnell.com, on the biography link, there is all the stuff that will absolutely put you to sleep in no time flat. You can find all the details there.
All right. So we know that you played in Rough Cut, and then you're somehow immersed into the Dio family. You want to tell us how you got into the Dio family?
Slowly and backwards.
There you go.
So I got into the Dio family via a kind of a detour through the Youth Thrall band. Are you guys familiar with Youth Thrall?
No.
No.
Oh, Hughes, no. Yeah. Glenn Hughes and Pat Thrall.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Voilà, exactly. Yes,
Yeah,
that's correct.
got you.
So obviously, I was acquainted with Ronnie and Wendy because Wendy was when Wendy first decided that she was going to try her hand at band management. Rough Cut was the first band that she considered taking under her wing. So Rough Cut had arranged to do a showcase to present ourselves to her, and we were moderately nervous. I mean, not terribly. It was not a big deal, but so we rented a big soundstage at SIR in Los Angeles, one of the bigger rehearsal studios. And we were a pretty seasoned band. I mean, I don't know if you know all the guys in the band, but Jakey Lee was on guitar. There was myself. There was Joe Cristofanelli, who went on to play with Rat. Who else? There was a drummer by the name of David Alford, who kind of disappeared into woodworks. And then, of course, there was the inimitable Paul Shortino, who seems to turn up everywhere. In any case, we knew what we were doing. Paul and I had worked on the songwriting for a long time, so we had our stuff down pretty well. And, we were just going through the set, and the door to the studio opened, and in walked Wendy, unmistakably, with her, her snow white hair. And behind her was her business her business partner, a lovely woman by the name of Patty Stein, who, if you don't recognize the name, was the wife of Mark Stein. Is that ringing a bell for you?
It's a very common name.
Well, yes, this was a particularly common name because he was one of the world's perhaps best organ players.
Okay.
And
Yes.
his claim to fame was being the keyboard player and singer in the Vanilla Fudge.
Oh, okay, right. Okay.
Carmine's band, right. So Wendy and Patty walk in, and we're like, okay, here they are. And instantly behind Patty, in walks Ronnie. So now the nervous factor kind of went up a little bit. And behind Ronnie, in walked Mark Stein.
There you
So
go.
Mark Stein is, like I said, he's a fellow keyboard player. He's also from Brooklyn. I knew I was a big fan of the Fudge when I was a kid, so I knew who he was, and he kind of knew who I was. But having Ronnie there was kind of a pressure that we hadn't anticipated, because as far as we knew, it was only going to be Wendy coming down to listen to us. In any event, we finished this whatever song we were playing, and just as we finished the last note, they broke into applause, which completely broke the tension. But Ronnie just jumped off the couch and walked up to the stage and walked right up to me and shook my hand. And he said, "Hello, Claude, is it? I'm Ronnie Dio." I'm like, "Yeah, no kidding, dude." And that's basically how we met. But Ronnie was always a very magnanimous and friendly and open-hearted guy. So the tension was pretty much over instantly. And I dare say that long before we were bandmates, we were well on the way to becoming rather good friends. So that was how it started. And of course, he went on to produce some songs for Rough Cut, which your more astute listeners might have heard on YouTube. Yeah. Particularly, not for any other reason, unfortunately, than the fact that Jake was on those demos. And the guitar solo he plays in a song called A Little Kindness, for my money, is as good as pretty much any solo he's ever played. If you've not heard the guitar solo in Rough Cut's A Little Kindness, you owe it to yourself to go crawling through the internet to find it and give it a good listen, because you will not be disappointed. But anyway, so Ronnie and I had established a relationship based on our, well, a lot of our mutual interests. We both had gone to the same university. We both were involved in animal rescue and a bunch of other details. We were both from New York. But beyond that, we just got to be friends. And when the time came that Dio was when he left Black Sabbath to begin recording the Holy Diver record, there were some conversations about me being the keyboard player in the band. But there was some tension whenever that discussion came up, and it became apparent that Jimmy Bain, the legendary bass player from Rainbow and eventually Dio, he had his intention set on being kind of a Geddy Lee search, where he would be the bass player as well as the keyboard player. And frankly, if the Dio set had been limited to the Holy Diver record with Rainbow in the Dark, he probably could have pulled it off. But the truth was that, honestly, I really wasn't very excited at the prospect of being known for the 9 notes in Rainbow in the Dark. I had been playing keyboards for a very long time, regardless of how good I was or wasn't. I was ambitious in terms of what I wanted to be able to do. And my tastes ran more towards, well, if you listen to the Used Thrall record, that will give you a pretty good idea. So it was clear that Dio was going to be basically a 3-piece band with just the occasional keyboard flourish. So that really didn't speak to me. Plus, which it was kind of an afterthought. It wasn't going to be a member of the band. It was just somebody that was there to do the parts that nobody else could do. So it was fine. I was perfectly happy to continue on playing with Used Thrall, because it was very challenging. Of course, Glenn is one of the great musical geniuses of our time. So what I learned from him was just invaluable. And Pat, of course, an equally brilliant musician and wonderful guitarist. Unfortunately, Glenn was in a place in his life where he was still wrestling with his demons, and as a result, Pat and Glenn decided that they would part ways, which meant that Used Thrall kind of had come to an end. So that gave me pause, because I didn't really know where the next step was going to be. But Glenn was very anxious to have me continue on with him in what was going to be the Glenn Hughes Band. Unfortunately, in the course of doing our demos, it became obvious to me that if it was going to become a successful project, it was going to be a very, very difficult environment to exist in. There was just for my taste, being the young New Yorker that I was, there was just too much distraction. It was more about Glenn as the legend than it was about Glenn as the musician.
Okay.
There were many distractions when we were in the studio. I mean, the music was brilliant. Glenn's singing was without parallel.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there were so many other things that kind of intruded into the process that the amount of time we actually spent playing or writing was unacceptably low for me. The night this actually reached a crescendo, and Max Norman, who was producing the demos, a very famous producer
Right.
from the Pat Travers days, he and I had to sneak out of the record plant without Glenn knowing it, because we just had to escape what that evening had turned into. But because of the way we left, I ended up having to walk home from the studio, which was fine. The sun was coming up. It was an early summer, actually, I think it was a September morning, and it was really good to cleanse the soul and think about the crossroads that I was finding myself at. You know, I had left Rough Cut for the opportunity to play with Glenn. I had kind of passed on the Dio option, even though it wasn't actually offered to me at that point, but because of my loyalty to Glenn. And here I was, really with no idea what I was going to do, you know, with the rest of my life after that night, because the one thing I knew is that I couldn't go on carrying on with Glenn the way we were going.
Right.
So it took me about an hour and a half to walk home from where the studio was. And I get home, my wife is just about to leave. Hi, baby, bye-bye, go see you, boy. And all I wanted to do was just find the bed and become horizontal for a while. Just at that point, the phone rings, and I answered it, and it's like, hello, Claude, it's Ronnie. And I don't know why he always would say it's Ronnie, as if there was ever any doubt when you hear his voice who it was. I'm like, oh, hey, Ron, what's going on? He goes, did I catch you at a bad time? And I said, well, no, actually, it's really good to hear your voice. I didn't want to bore him with the details of the previous night, because Ronnie, having had known Glenn for a decade or more than I had,
right,
he certainly knew his share of stories about him. And he said, listen, the reason I'm calling is that I want you to join the band. Excuse me? He said, well, yeah, so as it turns out, we're going to start touring pretty soon, and we don't have enough material with the Holy Diver album to cover the amount of time that we're going to have to play in our set. So we're going to have to supplement the Dio tunes with some Rainbow and possibly some Sabbath tunes as well, and there's no way that Jimmy can cover the keyboard parts in that. So if you'd be interested in doing it, I will look no further. You'll be the guy. I'm like, wow. Well, I can't tell you how fortuitous the timing is. And then I proceeded to give him a little bit of a taste of what had happened the night before, to which Ronnie gave me his standard answer. Well, that's Glenn. If you play with Glenn, you have to assume that you're going to be dealing with those consequences. But so let me tell you a few things about it. You're actually just going to be a sideman. I mean, the band is really just going to be Jimmy, Vinny, and myself. But if things go well, I see no reason that keyboards can't eventually become a part of the band. But at least in the initial
stages,
touring
cycle.
No, that's not exactly close enough. In the initial touring cycle, we're gonna want you to be off stage. And of course, that didn't really sit well with me. But after the night I had just had, as far as I was concerned, the stage was the last place I was going to be again anyway. So, and armed with the knowledge that if I said no, there would undoubtedly be a parade of 100 guys behind me just chomping at the bits to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Plus which, I had already grown very, very fond of Ronnie. Vinny was well on his way to being my best friend. So I was like, yeah, sure, I don't care. Let's just do it. So that was it. That was how I worked my way into the Dio family in earnest, and that's how I got to be on the Holy Diver tour, at the end of which Ronnie approached me and asked me if I wanted to make this kind of a full-time commitment, because we're going to get ready to start doing the next record, and I'd like the keyboards to have a more prominent part than they had on the Holy Diver record. And of course, the title track, Last in Line, kind of speaks for itself in that regard.
Right.
What about the song Mystery? Did you participate in that one, or is it Jimmy Bain who did that?
Funnily enough, when it was time to do Mystery, I had a long-standing appointment with an attorney in L.A. that I had postponed twice before, and he was doing my wife and I a huge favor with the time he was giving us. So I really had to leave for a day to fly to L.A. to take care of this this family business. And the day that I was gone was the day that they did Mystery, and it was Ronnie who actually played the keyboards on that track.
Tell us about your contributions on Last in Line, please.
Well, before we get into that in depth, just because you're asking about the song Mystery, as jolly of a tune as that is, Ronnie was under a lot of pressure from Warner Brothers to come up with a follow-up to Rainbow in the Dark. Understandably, Rainbow in the Dark was just a huge hit for the band. So Mystery was the song that we had come up with very little input from me. But Ronnie had wanted a keyboard hook, much like the Rainbow in the Dark melody, and he had come up with a melody which was the melody that exists on the record, but in a livelier, more poppy formulation. So if you think that keyboard part is cheesy the way it is, you should have heard it before.
Oh, wow.
Devo.
So Ronnie insisted. He said, "Claude, I really hate this fucking keyboard part. But it has to have something. What can we do to darken it up?" So I simply said, "Well, just make it in a minor mode rather than major." And, well, how do we do that? Well, we'll change the major third to a minor third, and the riff changed, and it became the one that's on the record now, even though I never got to play it or got any credit for it or anything else.
So is Hungry for Heaven the same attempt with a keyboard influence to try to get a hit?
No, Hungry for Heaven was written specifically for a film.
Okay.
That was for, give me a second, it'll come to me, Vision Quest.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
have you seen the movie Vision
the
Quest?
song's better than the film, I would take it.
Yeah, I saw Vision Quest. Yeah. So
yeah, so it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
On Last in Line, what else did you contribute on the album? Like, I mean, what were the pros and cons, and what did they let
contribute,
you do?
Is that the same as contribute?
Yes.
Yeah.
Contribute.
So on Last in Line, even though there are those who would take issue with this, but you can believe whoever you choose to, the intro and the chorus part were written on keyboards.
Okay.
All right.
Now, I'm pretty sure that it was Viv who wrote the rhythm track for that song. But however the intro began, it didn't have the same voicing that became prominent when I played it on keyboards.
Very cool.
Same with the chorus, which is why if you listen to the chorus, I mean, I talked to Ronnie about this briefly, and he wouldn't give me the satisfaction of confirming it. But if you listen to the chorus track on the title track of the Last in Line album, you can barely hear the guitars. It's virtually all keyboards.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And I mean, the joke was, well, you must have tipped Angelo to put the keyboards hotter in the mix. But the truth is, there isn't a speck of sound on any Dio record that didn't pass Ronnie's approval.
Yeah, can I ask you about that? Because every album we used to buy back in the 80s at the Dio, we turn over and it's lyrics and melodies of Ronnie James Dio. Like, did anybody get any writing credits? Did they get any income from
writing?
the songs?
So a quick lesson in publishing. When it comes to the rights to a song, they are based entirely on two things: the melodies and the lyrics.
Okay.
Every guitar player who writes a riff and thinks that qualifies as writing a song, sorry, doesn't work that way. Yeah, so it's all about the melodies and the lyrics. And I think because Ronnie got the short end of the stick in much of the Rainbow credits, as well as possibly Sabbath. I mean, I don't really know Ronnie's business, nor would I presume to have asked him, because that's something most people don't like to talk about anyway. But I suspect that the fact that there was the omnipresence of melodies and lyrics by Ronnie James Dio was just to get it out of the way that this was his project. Every word was his, every note was his, and as such, it was the band Dio. It wasn't the collective assortment of everybody chipping in, because that isn't how the songs were written. Ronnie would write the lyrics, Ronnie would write the melodies, and as far as the music went, everyone would contribute. We'd either jam, or usually whoever the guitar player du jour was would have some kind of a riff, and then Ronnie would play with it a little bit, and then Vinny would put down a rhythm, and Jimmy was actually pretty good at fleshing out the simplest ideas and making them more sing-songy, making them more song-like. But all of that stuff qualifies mostly as arrangement.
As a fan, Yes, Dio was there. He was a singer. His name was on every up. But I always thought it was a kind of a band, right? I mean, Jimmy, like you said, was a contributor. You got the guitar players. Vinny's backbone to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, were you guys considered like sidemen or hired hands? Or
Well, you know, when you get into the area of semantics, it's usually subject to interpretation. I mean, for better or worse, for the first 3 albums, or the first, how many, what it was, 4 years of that band, so what?
82 to
83 to 86. We were a band. There's no question about it. We were, you know, the band isn't a band isn't determined by who gets paid what.
Okay.
What makes a band is much more visceral than the business arrangements. It has to do with how you hang out, the mutual respect. I mean, it was just. It's very hard to describe this, especially for me, because on the first 3 records, I basically was just a salaried player.
Okay.
But regardless of who says otherwise, I was in the band. I mean, we were a band. Ronnie would call me in the middle of the night to go hang out. I mean, it was a band.
Right.
You know what?
Now, if you want to get strictly semantic about it, a band is, for example, a band would be Aerosmith, where the guys were all college students together. They started as a group. No matter what they do, they split everything equally. That's a band.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a dated paradigm. I don't think that really exists anymore.
Yeah.
Most bands now are just about the songwriter and the guys who come along, like Bon Jovi, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bon Jovi may give the illusion of being a band, but I can guarantee you that if you got into the accounting book,
the bank accounts,
that ain't the way it is.
Yeah. You know, Vinny Appice told me, you know, Vivian was sort of like the lightning rod in all of this, because he was the only one fighting for like the money that was sort of like owed to them. And you know, and Vivian was very blunt about it. He goes, and that's kind of why he kind of lost interest in the band over the years, because it started off as a band, at least that's what he told me, and then over the years it kind of became more of a Dio project, and plus they were promised money that they never got. I mean, can you comment about that?
I could.
Choose not to.
You don't want to. You don't want. You don't have to.
Here's why I won't. Because it's not my place to talk about what monies other people did or didn't get.
Gotcha.
So that was
I will say this: for as much as I was led to believe that I would get early on and didn't, as frustrated as I was about it, I found my solace in the fact that I knew what Vinny was promised when he left Sabbath to go be Ronnie's right-hand man, and Vinny never got it either.
Yeah.
So as bad as I felt about not getting, whatever it was, I could only imagine being in Vinny's shoes, being promised the world and not getting it.
But Vivian, on the other hand, he was the one who was speaking out, and nobody else was, and that's kind of
So that goes to more of a anthropological issue than it has to do with the band.
Okay.
So I don't know what situations you found yourself in with other people, but the people who usually speak up the most are the people who have the least to lose. So being in a band in LA in that day, no matter how secure you are, it was a very tentative position, because there was always somebody trying to get your gig. Yeah. There was always somebody who thought they were better than you. There was always somebody who was newer, who had a better rep, who had some tricks, who was better looking or younger or who knows what. But if you look at the lineage of especially guitar players, their lifespan in most bands was extremely limited. I mean, Ronnie used to say that musicians in LA bands are basically interchangeable parts of a jigsaw puzzle. You could look at so many. Look at for example, Deep Purple, Whitesnake, and what was Mel Galley's band? Trapeze.
Trapeze.
They're interchangeable parts. I mean, there are so many different incarnations of the same guys being in different bands. You don't really know where. I mean, look at what happened to Jake with Ozzy, or Daisley with Ozzy, for that matter. There's nobody could really say that they knew that what was true on Monday was going to remain true on Tuesday. So as a result, that keeps people in those positions relatively docile. You don't want to stir the shit. You don't want to make waves when it could mean losing your meal ticket.
Yeah.
Enter Viv, who came from a wealthy family.
Oh.
Right, exactly. So as far as Viv was concerned, the pittance that he was getting paid by Ronnie, and I can tell you this much, that in the early days, our salaries were not anywhere near what much less famous bands were making. But, we had the distinction of playing with the greatest singer of the day, so, okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
And, nobody had a gun to our head. If we didn't like what we were making, we were more than welcome to go and find a gig somewhere else. Which, interestingly, it's not very well known, but in, I want to say 85, after the Sacred Heart tour, I was just about to do, because I had gotten invited to go audition for Foreigner.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And it was a big money gig. And Lou Gramm was a friend of mine from my days in Buffalo. Lou Gramm used to play in a band called Black Sheep before he went into Foreigner. And Black Sheep was a band from Rochester. I was going to school in Buffalo. So we played a lot of the same circuits. We crossed paths a lot. I actually think I met Lou through Billy Sheehan, who was a very, very close friend of mine.
Okay.
Billy Sheehan, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Towers.
Okay, so
Sons of Apollo.
when I got the call from Foreigner's management, I was in Corpus Christi, Texas, and they said, yeah, look, Foreigner's going out on tour. And this was, by the way, I forgot I think it was the 4 album, or whatever the album was that was Yesterday.
Adrian Provoca.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
So they wanted me to fly up like the next weekend to audition, and I'm like, dudes, I'm in the middle of a tour with Dio. Yeah, but we hear you're not really happy there. I said, well, be that as it may, I'm not going to walk out on a frickin' tour. I mean, that's just not done. Oh, well, we may find somebody else by the time you're ready to come audition. I said, well, if that's what happens, that's what happens. But I don't want to be the guy who leaves someone like Ronnie in the lurch.
Right.
That's not the way I was brought up. So by the time the tour was over, I got a call from Wendy, who called me into the office. She goes, so what's this I hear about you going to play for Foreigner?
Ooh.
I'm like, well, I don't know. Did I already pass the audition? Because I haven't even auditioned yet. Oh, well, are you going to audition? I said, well, you're my manager. Shouldn't I? Well, I guess if you want to, you can. I said, look, I need to go to New York to see my mom anyway. My mom was in quite ill health. They were going to buy me a first-class ticket to go to New York. I loved that. I loved that album. My wife and I and my song was "Waiting for a Girl Like You" from the 4 album.
Really?
So the opportunity to go play with the actual band and do that song was just too tempting to not want to do. And honestly, I didn't really think that it was going to be something that would lure me away from Dio. That being said, after the Unfulfilled Promises, I felt I owed it to myself to at least consider my options. So I'm all set to go to New York. I spent like 2 days crashing trying to learn all these songs at the same time. Basically didn't learn any of them because it just turned into one big mush in my head. And the night before I'm supposed to leave, I get a call from Ronnie, who asked me to come over to his house for dinner. Which I don't know how many guys you've spoken to, but Ronnie was quite a decent cook, and he was known for inviting people over to his house just for a meal. He always did Thanksgiving on his own, and he would always cook and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I didn't want to say no, because you don't say no to somebody who invites you to dinner, especially when it's Ronnie. Even though my flight was like at 7 o'clock the following morning. So I went over and we're having a dinner and we're having a great old time. And he goes, listen, the real reason I called you over is because I really have to apologize. I know that we promised you a bunch of things that, for reasons out of our control, never really came to pass. But I give you my word of honor that on the next tour, on the next record, you're going to have everything that you wanted. We may even throw a keyboard solo on the record. You'll certainly have a keyboard solo in the live show. And I really want to exploit your abilities and let you become the keyboard player that you've worked so hard to become. So I was like, well, that's nice to hear, but actually, do you really expect me to believe that there's anything that was out of your control? And he said, well, whether you believe it or not, there was. When the set was designed, it was designed in a way that, through nobody's fault, didn't include the provision for where the keyboards could be. And as a result, we kind of had to stick you wherever you could be. At least you weren't off stage. I don't know if you guys saw that tour, but I was like parked next to the Sphinx.
Yep, I saw Rough Cut open for you guys on the Sacred Heart tour here in the Montreal Forum.
Yeah, well, that was the one. There I was. It looked like I was the vet taking care of the Sphinx or something.
Yeah,
I don't know what.
That's it.
But for Ronnie to open up like that to me, that meant a lot to me. I mean, I think that might have been one of the first times that we really had a heart-to-heart, and I knew that this was Ronnie the person speaking to me, not Ronnie my boss, not Ronnie the brilliant artist, not Ronnie the producer, not Ronnie the singer, just Ronnie my friend. I mean, there was a, if I dare say, a bit of humility in the discussion that we had.
Did it come to
and that
pass?
meant a lot to me because, frankly, I didn't think I deserved. Well, I didn't think I deserved to be off stage, but frankly, I had agreed to that from day one. So you can't complain about something that you walked into with your eyes open.
Did it come to pass? On the next tour, did you get what was promised?
You did. You got and all the fools sailed away.
Assuming that you saw the Dream Evil, the Dream Evil tour, absolutely it passed. If you don't know, go on YouTube and look for my solo, and you'll find it.
There you go.
But let's go back to the Sacred Heart recording. I know we kind of skipped over that. What were your contributions to that album?
To be honest, I don't remember.
And there you go.
Well, look, only because that album was a transitional one for us.
Okay.
To describe it as if you think of the band when things are good as a tight knot where the ropes are all firmly together, by the time Sacred Heart was being recorded, the knot was loosening.
Okay.
For one thing, we had all so enjoyed being up at Caribou Ranch where we recorded the Last in Line record. For whatever reason, it was decided that the Sacred Heart record would be recorded at home here in LA, which is fine. I mean, we all got time to spend more. We all got to spend more time with our loved ones and see our dogs and take care of household stuff and not have to just disappear. But that had a consequence, and I think in addition to everything else, the added stress in everybody's lives because you were living at home and basically going to a day job, it made it a less productive and a less conducive environment to do what we had done on Last in Line. Not to say that we didn't do a good job, but I think we were all looking forward to the same escape that we had when we were in Colorado recording the Last in Line album. And doing Sacred Heart here in the Valley, it just wasn't the same. Plus, by that time, it was obvious that Viv had become a little bit disenchanted. Ronnie had become, for lack of a better word, a little bit cranky, probably justifiably so. Again, just because, I don't want to speak out of school, but instead of being far away from the things which aggravated him, he was very close to them, and you could read into that whatever you want to.
Yeah. And so then Craig Goldie comes into play on the next album.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what was the atmosphere like with him coming into being the new guy on the block?
Yeah, well, that also was a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, Craig is a very accomplished guitar player, but we all felt that Viv was really treated very badly. Not so much by Ronnie, but it was obvious that those decisions were being handled, for lack of a better word, by Wendy.
Okay.
And I mean, Viv was basically set up, and he was put in a position where the only thing that he could do was the exact thing that would get him kicked out of the band. And when it came to pass, Wendy was chomping at the bit to walk Craig into the band, and Viv just got very unceremoniously let go. In my humble opinion, for no real fault of his own.
I loved him as a guitarist. I loved him as a guitarist.
Yeah, you can say a lot of shit about Viv about a lot of different things, but none of it has to do with his guitar playing.
That's it. I know, Vivian went off to Def Leppard, right? And Ronnie
Right.
was like, I can't believe such a talented guy is playing for Def Leppard, right? But it's a good gig, right? I don't know.
Well, yeah. So you see that's an interesting thing to go ahead and say that after you've been paying him a pittance far beneath his market value, then you fault him for getting a gig where he's making 10 times what he made in Dio.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit disingenuous to pretend, when you're bringing home the lion's share of all the money. Oh, I can't believe that guy went and got a job at GM making $50 an hour when I was paying him 10.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way life goes. And for whatever Def Leppard is or isn't as far as music is concerned, they're a machine. They will be a legendary band that will never be forgotten.
Yeah.
So for Viv to have become a part of that, I think was a very good move for him. Unfortunately, I think the best move for Viv, I think the best move for all of us would have been had we stayed together, had Wendy been willing to allow a more equitable split so we could all have a living wage, and allow the band to develop the way bands used to develop back in the day before it became all about the money.
I was really upset when Vivian left. It was like, it's exactly how you portrayed it. I mean, I was really upset. I mean, here's an integral part of the sound. As much as I like Dream Evil, I wish there was another album with Vivian, that's all.
I'll tell you what, again, not to take anything away from Craig, but I think Dream Evil would have been a better record if it was Viv who was doing it.
Is it true that Craig, because I think I read this in a Dio interview, that Craig had problems coming up with solos for that album? It was really a very difficult process.
Well, so here's the thing. There are different schools of thought of what makes a good solo. For my money, the best solo is the one that you play when you're not thinking about it, and you stop and go, "Holy shit! How did I play that?" Well, once upon a time, solos were it was just an emotive part of the song. It was a chance for you to have your own little signature thing, and if it was great, so much the better. But even if it sucked, it was you. It was who you are. It was just like a thumbprint on the song. And at some point, when the Guitar Hero thing came into vogue, people became very analytical about solos. Well, if you listen to the 30-second bar of this solo, he doesn't really play that very... In fact, even if you listen to Zeppelin, Jimmy Page is really sloppy. Who fucking cares?
Yeah,
Jimmy
exactly.
Page, Zeppelin. It's not about, the thing is, people who can't create things as magical as some of these people, all they can do is find things to criticize. And if you get analytical, believe me, I'm as anal as they come. I could find shit to criticize about everybody on anything. But that's not what life is about. Life is about standing back and allowing the vibe to flow over you and just basking in the genius of its individuality.
Yes, exactly.
Sometimes the best thing about a performance are the mistakes.
Yeah.
It's not about being a technician, although there are those who would swear that it is. I mean, if you like that kind of technical perfection, well, then good for you. I mean, you're everybody's entitled to like what they like. But that's not what the art is. The art is the flaws, the character, the depth of feeling that is emoted by the delivery of the art, whether it's a painting or a drawing or a poem or a solo.
Yeah.
It's not about precision.
That's what lives on in the end of the day.
Yeah, so tell us about the Dream Evil recording now. Now you got your solo.
I finally got my solo.
Tell us about the whole recording
the
process,
full
the
sail
good, the
away.
bad. What an incredible track.
Yeah.
So, to be there was a lot about the Dream Evil record that was memorable. For one thing, again, we were doing it at home, but at this time we were doing it at a really, really fantastic studio, a place called the Village Recorder. I think that's one of the places where Fleetwood Mac did Rumors. Pink Floyd had recorded there. Paul McCartney recorded there. Mr. Mister recorded there. I can't even keep. I don't even remember all the bands but it was a very, very well respected and wonderful studio to work at. So we were in a much better place by the time that record rolled around because Craig had already done a tour. He was reluctantly now one of the boys. I mean, it was what it was. everybody seemed to be in a better place mentally. Unfortunately, right around the time we were doing that, Vinny's mom passed away.
Oh, no.
So that was kind of a very sad but unifying sort of event. But the thing about that record is we had a very firm game plan going into the studio. We had done a lot of pre-production at Ronnie's studio in his home, and as a result, the recordings were pretty straightforward. We knew what the songs were going to be. We knew how to play them. There wasn't a lot of stuff that was done on the fly, as it had been during Sacred Heart, which was, like I said, pulling teeth because of all the stress that was there. But the thing that stands out to me, and getting to Craig's solo thing, was Ronnie had approached me and said, "All right, dude, you want your solo? You got it. This is the song I wanted it." And of course, it's in like some fucking C sharp minor 7 flat, stupid Plutonian fucking mode. And I'm like, really? This is what I got to do a solo to? I'm like, all right, that's cool. And luckily, Ronnie told me early on enough that I could have a little time to work on it. In complete contradiction to what I had just said about how lovely it is to just play a solo by the seat of your pants. But I promise you, that solo I could never have played by the seat of my pants. That solo represents considerable hours of intensive labor, of writing it, of calculating how to play it, of making it difficult enough so that I could be confident that it would be impressive, and practicing it enough so that I could be confident that I wouldn't fuck it up if I had to do it live. So I worked pretty diligently on that. But it was all in a void. I mean, I knew that I liked what I was doing. I had a roommate at the time, my best friend from childhood, who basically I owe my career to, because he was the guy who turned me on to my first Deep Purple record, Joey Belfiore, if anybody's curious. And and he was my roommate, and every time I'd work on it, he goes, "Yeah, that's really great, but that one part really sucks." I'm like, "That part sucks." He goes, "It just sounds like you're just going to the obvious place, man. I mean, come on, you can do better than that." I'm like, "I'm not sure I can." He goes, "Come on, man." That was his thing. Another kid from Brooklyn. "Come on, man." So I'd fuck around with it, and all right, what do you think of that? "Yeah, that's better, but come on, you could, imagine your mom's watching you practice." Oh, great. That's just what I did. This kid's known me since I was 7 or 8 years old. So when he first heard me play, he heard me as a little classical nerd. And that's, I think, what created his interest in me as a musician, just because, I was very schooled and he was not at all. But that's a story for another day. In any case, I finally get the solo pretty well finished. And now I'm just, as a matter of course, every day practicing it 3 times a day. When I get up, before I even brush my teeth, I go sit at the piano and da-da-da-da-da, and I'm just working on it. Before I leave for the day, I'd play it another time. Now I'm a little bit awake so I can actually play it. And then before I'd crash at night, I'd play it one more time, just to make sure that there wasn't anything that bothered me, to make sure it was getting pretty well registered into my head. And then the moment of truth comes. We're in the studio and they, "Okay, Claude, tomorrow we're doing the solo." "Huh? What? Really?" He goes, "Yeah, it's not ready?" I don't know. No, it's fine. But this was the moment of truth. That at that point, this was 1987, right? Right. So I'd been working up to hoping to get a solo on a Dio record for 4 years, and this was going to be the moment of truth. The day comes, we go to the studio, walk in, and nobody else is there because it's just going to be Ronnie and Angelo, our engineer, and myself, because nobody else needs to do anything. And I walk into the studio, and my keyboards are set up in the control room. And Ronnie wasn't around, but Angelo was already there getting up a mix. And he goes, so Angelo, also from Brooklyn, Vinny's best friend from childhood, who grew up like 3 blocks away from me. So Claude, you ready to do this or what? Like, yeah, sure, Angelo. Let's have one. So so he puts up the backing track to which I'm going to play the solo, and I'm trying to find the exact right sound. I had the ideas of what I was going to do, but I just kind of was dialing it in. And he goes, "Well, let's do it for real." So okay, so he's playing it, and I start playing along, and Ronnie walks in the middle of this, and he's sitting down, and he looks. When it's done, he turns to Angelo, and he goes, "So did you get that?" And Angelo goes, "Well, yeah, sure. Why?" He turns around to me, because I didn't know they were recording this, right? I even looked and I didn't see the red light on the machine, but apparently Angelo had recorded it. So Ronnie turns to me, he goes, "Claude, that was fucking magic. Can you double it?"
Oh,
yeah, sure. So I doubled it. I played it again virtually the same way. It's like when you double a guitar track, you just put down the same track, and it's slightly different so it makes it sound a little bigger.
Yeah.
So we did it 4 times, and Angelo bounced the 2 of them together on one pan and 2 of them on the other pan, so left and right, so they were spread out across the audio spectrum. And that was it. The solo I played when I didn't even know I was being recorded is the one that ended up on the record.
There you go. But a lot of practice went into it. A lot of practice.
It did, but I'll tell you what, a lot of practice has gone into things before where Ronnie would look at me and go, "What the fuck are you thinking?" so the fact that this one was like, that was fucking magic. Ronnie really, really, really liked it. I mean, it wasn't like a pretend of like, oh yeah, that's okay. Why don't you see what else you can do? Or that's okay. No, he dug it. He totally. Even live, I remember after we'd been touring for months and months and months, I'd be doing the keyboard solo, and he'd be checking it out. It was kind of cool.
You've been on record saying that this whole hologram, Ronnie Dio hologram, is not probably something that Ronnie would have liked. I just wanted your thoughts on that, and also what you think of the bands like Dream Child that kind of carry on the tradition.
Yeah, no, I'll absolutely go check it out. I'm sure it's good. Those are all excellent, competent players, and if there was anybody who'd be capable of carrying on that genre of music, I'm sure they could. My feeling about it, though, much like with with Last in Line or the Disciples or any of these other bands, the music is one thing, but Dio was about the voice, man.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. When Last in Line started rehearsing, the very, very first rehearsal we did, even before we made the choice of, well, that's not even the right word. Even before Andrew had waltzed into the picture, when it was just Jimmy, Vinny, Viv, and myself, we had remember I told you I was anal, so I'm the mathematical guy. When we were all in the room, it fell to me to figure out how long has it been since we've been in the same room together. And I think I calculated that it was like 26 years.
Jesus. Wow.
Which was just like mind-boggling. If we were born the last time we had gotten together, we'd already be pushing middle age. So it's like, what the fuck? How did 26 years? Because it certainly didn't feel like it was that long. But regardless, Vinny started to stand up and shout, and bam, we played it like we'd been playing it last week, which really is a testament to Ronnie's work ethic, because we never stopped until it was perfect. And to Ronnie's credit, that's why Dio never did a bad show, because we were rehearsed within an inch of our lives, man, and we could do that shit, drunk, blindfolded, falling off Jimmy actually was drunk and blindfolded many times, but we always pulled it off. And here it was 26 years later, and we just nailed it. So after about 20 minutes of playing, the door to our rehearsal studio opens up, and these kids who were rehearsing down the hall stick their head in. They go, "Hey man, don't mean to interrupt you guys, but you're the best Dio cover band ever." Yeah, thanks for that, dude. But here's the thing. So the music sounded exactly like it had sounded from 1983 to 1989, as it should have. We were the same band. But at first my thought was, man, when's Ronnie going to walk in? Because it really felt like we were doing sound check, and Ronnie was going to walk in and grab the mic, and it was going to be like, the old days.
Right.
But the fact is that Ronnie didn't walk in. And as good of a job as you may think that Andrew did or didn't do, it doesn't really matter, because it was never Dio. It was never the same thing. This is like all those movies where the guy takes his dead wife and he reanimates her because he thinks it's the same wife, but there's always something that's a little weird about it.
Right.
It's kind of like that, and I mean, I was happy to do it because, I mean, it was fun. At least it was supposed to be fun, and maybe it was for a little while. But it just with Ronnie, we were in the presence of greatness, and that made all of us better. Without Ronnie being there, I don't know, man. It just seemed really. I don't want to say pointless,
empty,
but. Empty. Well, hollow is the word that I used in the interview that you heard about me saying what Ronnie, what his thoughts would have been about the hologram. And with that in mind, again, I won't presume to tell you what I think about what certain people are doing with his memory, but it just seems to me that that it isn't about Ronnie anymore. It's. I mean, they can say it's about keeping him and his music alive, but nobody ever made holograms of the Beatles, and their music is still alive.
Yeah.
I think they're decisions based on more pragmatic concerns. I'll put it that way.
Well,
you got a bunch of guys who can't find gigs. They're managed by the same woman who has contacts in all around the world with agencies and promoters. And what could be a more natural thing than taking the out-of-work musicians and putting them on tour and making a little money while you're at it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, don't get me wrong. Not to take anything away from these guys. I mean, they all do a great job, and if the fans are happy about it, that's all that matters. But you're not asking me what the fans think. You're asking me what I think.
Yeah, Claude.
And also,
why did you? And we'll have to keep this within like a minute or two. Why did you end up leaving Dio originally after Dream Evil?
Okay, the short version, because all the things that were going wrong with the band were escalating. I knew that Vinny was whether Vinny had gotten fired or not. I knew that he was planning to leave to go play with Jeff Pilson in a band called War and Peace. Jimmy had already been fired. The guitar player who we wanted to replace Craig, who, when I say we, Jimmy, Vinny, and I all unanimously agreed that a guitar player by the name of Gary Hoey, who I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
You do know Gary Hoey, right?
Yeah.
When Gary Hoey, not a little known fact, Gary Hoey had auditioned for us, and he was amazing. I don't think the band ever sounded better. I think the only way that the Dio would have sounded better would have been if Tony Iommi was playing guitar.
Oh, boy.
But Gary just did a phenomenal job, and the three of us, Jimmy, Vinny, and myself, were convinced that, Ronnie's got to love this guy. He's going to be the guy. We're going to move on, and it's going to be better than it's been since Viv was gone. And after Gary left, Ronnie walks back into the studio, and he goes, guys, you're going to hate me for this, but he's not the guy. And you could just hear our collective hearts fall, because he was the guy. For whatever reason, Ronnie didn't want him, but Gary should have been the guitar player that got that gig. So given that we were straddled with a guitar player that we didn't want in the first place, mind you, not to pretend that it isn't Ronnie's decision, because I'm the first to acknowledge that what Ronnie wants, Ronnie gets, and Ronnie should get. It was his band. He's the one who signed the checks. He's allowed to do whatever he wants to do. But his choice in Rowan, I thought, and we all thought, was somewhat uninspired. And as badly as the rehearsals were going, Rowan was having a very hard time at the beginning, keeping up with the pressure that Ronnie puts everybody through. Because Ronnie is a very demanding producer and basically a boss. And Rowan was having problems keeping up with it, and the tension was just building and building. And it got to the point where, like I said, Jimmy got fired. Ronnie seemed terribly upset with Rowan's performance. The songs were lukewarm at best. So, but honestly, I really didn't want to be in a band that Vinny and Jimmy weren't going to be in.
Yeah,
Okay.
lock up the wolves.
There you go.
Lock up the wolves. Alan, do you have a final thing to say?
no, hey, Claude, fascinating. Like
Claude,
you said, we should do this more often. This is a great interview. Really,
Therapy
Why don't we do this? Why don't we make it a weekly thing?
There you go. Thank you, Claude,
Merci beaucoup, Claude.
for being on
An
the show.
absolute pleasure speaking with you guys. I hope you have a great weekend and get to your next appointment on time. And we'll be in touch, yeah?
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, you guys.
Take
A
care.
bientôt.